All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Primetime Patriots. We are here tonight with a very brave and now very well-known young man, Braden Ellis, and you've probably seen him on interviews on Fox News and many other places where he was on a Zoom call with his teacher doing a presentation on cancel culture of all things, and she essentially canceled his views on the police, said, okay, this is the end, we're not going to talk about this anymore, and didn't allow him to present his views. And, this is so characteristic of the left these days, and, what we're calling cancel culture and sort of a repression of free speech. So, Braden has been an icon in the past few days, so we are so lucky to have him here and to have these views coming our way. So whenever he's ready, we're going to bring him on and start this interview. And we hope it can be a little bit more in depth for you guys. Welcome, Braden.
Hi, guys. How are you? Nice to be with you.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you here with us, man. So obviously, you've gotten a lot of traction over the past few days, over the past week. So we want to move on from what you've been telling other interviewers so far. But I just want to start out and kind of ask you, how does it feel to be at the forefront of sort of the conversation at the moment?
Yeah, it's a feeling that I've never really been a part of before with this much attention. So I remember it was a Thursday and I was in my boss's office and I got a phone call from a reporter from the Daily Wire saying, your video is going viral. And I said, who are you and what video? And I figured out pretty quick, oh my goodness, this is going out pretty wild. And she was very nice, Chrissy Clark at the Daily Wire. She's been great. And to get this amount of attention has been somewhat of a piece. So a lot of people say it would be overwhelming. And it's an intense schedule with the interviews and such, but there's a random piece about it. And I just want to do the correct thing and say the right thing and bring up the ideas that I have.
Right on. It's really cool that someone as well-spoken as you has been able to kind of garnish a little bit of a platform here. It's surprising that just a private Zoom call can turn into such an ordeal.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? I think this video is the first of its really kind. People have heard of the professors going at students for their beliefs in articles and papers and such, but they've never really seen it live, like a video before, where it's about 3 minutes long. So that's why I think it gained a lot of traction, and people said, man, that kid and the professor, I feel that when I go to my class. A lot of conservative and free thinkers have that, where their professors are talking down to them and teaching them what to think and not how to properly think freely. So I think that a lot of people resonated with it.
Well, that's first off, that's kind of terrifying with the idea of a university being, a place for exchanges of ideas. And I've been through 6 years of the university system, and I have to say that, I had professors that were like this, and some of these critical race theory type stuff was baked into the curriculum. It really was. I never had an issue quite so crazy as yours when confronting professors. So, Braden, would you say that when you go to school in your other classes, have there been other instances of this or just hostility towards the ideas that maybe you or your classmates present?
Yeah, I have another class, and at least that professor lets me say what I feel, and that's what I want. I don't mind if someone has a democratic issue or a right side issue, just that they're allowed to say it. But I think in that other class that I took, there was not one thing that she said good about the country, where there was a proud accomplishment, like, how we saved people from 9/11, those thousands of lives, and just American hero stories. It was all about how we're a terrible country, how we're racist, how we're evil, this evil regime. And they're painting a picture that's so dangerous because it's not where we are. We have problems in our country, yes, but at the same time, we have very good people, and we have good things in our past. Yes, we have bad things, but we can't paint ourselves as this evil regime and brainwash kids into thinking, you're a victim of this oppression, and you're really not. The American dream is still alive and well. You just have to work hard for it.
Yeah, and it's especially unfair because you look at the runners-up to global power, and if you care about progressive values, if you consider yourself liberal in almost any way, diminishing the United States does not seem like the right way of going about pursuing those values. And it is really unfair that we've begun pushing this idea on our children that we are uniquely guilty of a variety of sins that really are universal. And if anyone has done a good job of pushing human rights and civil liberties, it has been the United States. Your teacher, she seemed very aggressive, very smug, and you came across as very calm and articulate. It's obvious that you didn't just come up with these opinions on the spot, that you've actually been thinking about this for a little bit, or at least that you're in a position where you feel comfortable speaking out about these things. How did you get interested in political ideas? How did you get involved in this arena?
Yes, good, very good question. I have a good story with that. When I was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, in those ages, I think beginning at maybe like, I'd say 4 years old, I memorized every single president. So I knew that I knew them by heart, by like, if you say a number like the 45th president or the 3rd president, I could give you the name and probably
17
about it. 17 is, I believe, Andrew Johnson. So I'm a little rusty.
I can't even fact check you on that.
Yeah, Andrew Johnson comes right after Abraham Lincoln. And then he got impeached. But, I've been a history buff for a little bit. And, I was very heavy into politics in 2016. I think President Trump got me a little bit more motivated into it. And, that's kind of how it started. I've always been very political. I liked John McCain back in 2008, I believe. And I don't know what grade I was in. That was obviously a mistake. I don't support him anymore, or Mitt Romney. But I was with them when, they were running against Obama. And I was with them, and I liked the political process. It was exciting for me. It's like a sports event. A lot of people like sports, and I'm into sports too, but the political just gets me, energized. And I know some people on the left have energized, enthusiasm for that too. So, that's kind of how it started at an early age. And I would fact check my teachers. I remember, and I don't want to take too much time on your question. When I was in 1st grade, my teacher, I remember this story. My mom always tells me. She said, the teacher, Alexander Hamilton is a president. And I remember raising my hand, and you're on like the little carpets with circles and all that stuff. And I raised my hand and I said, no, he's not. He was the Secretary of Treasury. Where'd you get that from? And that's embarrassing for a teacher. And then a small kid's going to fact check you like that. So that's kind of where it started at a young age, and it just sprouted from there.
Right. Hamilton was pursuing a central bank.
Right.
Yeah. What's interesting about that, Braden, is you say you got more energized when Trump came in. And I saw that on Fox News, you were talking about how he's more of a fighter, in that conservatives need to go out there and sort of fight and involve themselves in the culture. Well, what's so interesting is that you do this so openly and freely, where you see a lot of people on the left who, as soon as you challenge their ideas, and this is what happened with your teacher, I think, is you challenged one of her fundamental ideas. She broke down because she couldn't defend it. And what that shows to me is a fundamental lack of actual belief in a fragility of ideas. So, and I think that's really what's driving sort of this whole cancel culture thing, is like, if you think you can't beat the other side in a legitimate debate, well, then what are you going to do? You're going to try and shut them down. You're going to try and not allow them to talk in the first place. So going off that, what do you think is driving this idea of cancel culture on the left, who used to be what we say the bastion of progressive values, including free speech?
Yeah, and back in UC Berkeley, back in maybe the 80s and 70s, they were asking for free speech, and that's what I've heard. And now it's like they want you to speak one speech, and that's their speech. The other speech of the conservative movement, they don't want. So that's not free speech. You want people to think for themselves and be independent thinkers. Yes, the cancel culture aspect, I don't know. Like, you look at the syrup bottles like Aunt Jemima and maybe Uncle Ben's rice, which is a rice product, and I think Mr. Potato Head, that was interesting too. They canceled that one for certain things, and I don't know if I think they're going off the victimization thing that they want spreading to people across our country and students. It's a quite interesting thing, but cancel culture is really tearing apart our country. And I think China really looks at us like, are you serious? Like that's what they're thinking. Let's cancel Mr. Potato Head because of something like his first name or something. Yeah, that's not good. That's not going to get us places.
Yeah, well, they use it against us all the time. China is so good at using our own cultural idiosyncrasies and stupidities against us.
Right. And you know what? Like our Secretary of State, which is Anthony Blinken, he was in a meeting with China, and China brought up Black Lives Matter and how we don't have any position in the world. And then he sits there and he says, oh, you're right. I'm so sorry for our sins. It's like, really? That's our Secretary of State? Really? What happened to Mike Pompeo, who stood up to bullies and said, no, we're America. This is how we work, and this is how we operate, and this is what we're going to do. Deal with it.
Yeah. And just so you know, Cole and I have both been intimately familiar with China. We've both lived in China. We both speak a little bit of Chinese. We're both involved with Chinese women. I'm married and have a daughter with a Chinese woman. So it is something we talk about a lot. It is something we're close to. And you're right. It's interesting. At the same time as the Chinese foreign diplomats are going out there and raising a fist and saying Black Lives Matter, their country was blaming the pandemic on African immigrants and barring them from hotels and other fundamental aspects of living life. So it really is unfair. And again, I say, if you care about progressive values, in some sense, you have to put America first.
You have to put China on notice with that, because, you have the Muslim people that they treat terribly over there as well, too.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And I mean, you're not free to express any sort of belief over there. And we're getting to the point here where we are so free to express whatever anti-government or anti-belief that we have, that, people are hearkening over to the authoritarian side. You've probably seen in some leftist circles people saying, well, you know what, China is better than the U.S. All these other countries, which right now are committing atrocities in human rights, are better than the U.S. because the U.S. did bad things in the past. And that brings up what you said earlier, Braden, is we can't be beholden to the sins of our past. And that's why it's interesting that you said that, in college right now, what would you say is the general view of America as a country? And I mean, as a whole ecosystem of education, what would you say, what ideas do you get?
And, I'd say a good majority of, at least my experience, they teach Americans, students, that America is pretty evil. And it's like, well, yes, we have bad things, and we had, slavery and all that. Yes, we did. You can't live in the past. Humans are ever evolving. We're always evolving each and every day. So we're always progressing. So you can't just keep saying, no, let's go back to the past. Let's go back to the past and say, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. Well, I think the general sense among college students and professors in the colleges that they just don't teach good things about our country. And, you can teach about the past and bad things, but do it with grace and also include good accomplishments so we can see both sides and not just one side of it.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at things, and obviously every civilization throughout history has made mistakes, but it seems as though the majority of people today that are mining history for disparities and discriminations are not searching for the truth. They're instead looking for opportunities to exploit the sins of the past to somehow justify undermining our society today. And I mean, this cancel culture and everything else, it really seems like it's absolutely a violation of our fundamental principles. I mean, isn't the whole point in free speech, the whole point in democracy is to protect a dissenting opinion? Mm-hmm. That's the whole point. Free speech does not mean, free speech for those exclusively who agree with you. It means free speech so that we can actually discuss bad ideas and try to navigate a way forward.
Right, totally.
So I would like to let you have this opportunity to if you had to distill down your fundamental epistemology, what would it be? What is your basic political philosophy?
Yeah, so I would say number one, I'm a Christian, so I do believe in Christ. Secondly, for political reasons, I am a Republican, but I'm also someone that says we need to take care of our country. And I'm a common sense Republican too. So if I see something like balls and strikes, I'll call both. And that's where I align politically. I know I used to be more independent. Then I think the president came in and I kind of changed more to the Republican side, and I aligned more with those policies. And I think a lot of people that are Christian align themselves with the Republican Party because we don't want to worship government. We want to worship God. That's where I align right there. That's right on the head. That's where I go.
Yeah, and I think that's a serious breakdown in a lot of cultures. Like you do see in communist China, they have the biggest concentration of atheists in the world. But people need an ideology. And, whether it's animism or Christianity, in every human society, you see religion as a fundamental principle. So when you strip the ability of people to, put their belief in a higher power, whether it be God or something else, then what do they have to look to? They have to look to the government. They have to look to the jingoism of their party. And that's a lot of what communism is. And I mean, they take that from one line in Marx and they turn it into a state religion. It's a religion of governmentalism, which is fundamentally opposed, of course, to small government republicanism and conservatism at its core. So I think that's very important and interesting that you put those things together, the way you believe in something and how it aligns with the political philosophy.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing, which is, I'm really calling for ideological diversity. That's what I want throughout campus. And I'd like a lot of colleges to say that word, that we support ideological diversity, because that's a pretty heavy word. And if they say that and they're committed to that, then they get both sides, conservative and Democrat. And I don't think they would teach that critical race theory so much. And if I would love to see colleges across America write out a press release or a statement, say, we're committed and we support ideological diversity for all spectrums of the political agenda, because I may not align with the Democratic Party and go with them, but at least I'll say, hey, they have a right to say their piece. And that's the way it goes, and that's what I believe about it. Now, you look at a country like Iran, where it used to be a Western civilization, and then that religion kind of took it over, and you see how Iran is now, and it's interesting to see that. So, yeah, I align myself with the Christian and Republican area, so I worship God there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this all comes down to really you being shut down in that moment and not getting a chance to kind of finish your thoughts and ideas and express what you had to say, specifically about the police in this country. And I just want to ask you now, Braden, if you were allowed to finish and kind of continue your presentation and say what you wanted to say for everybody, what would it be if you hadn't been shut down with regards to the police?
I got out a lot of my points in there. I would say this, that, a good majority, very, very good majority of police are heroes. That's what I would add to it. I gave that speech, and I don't think a lot of people in my class agreed with what I was saying. And that's okay. And I just think that cancel culture was, tearing apart and still is tearing apart our country. But I think that I'd add basically, our cops have been really just shuttered and hammered and just spit upon. I mean, remember watching maybe almost a year and a half ago or 2 years, the NYPD is just doing their duty, and people get frozen water bottles and they're chucking in at the police officers. And that's what's going on with our police. I mean, people grab soup cans and they chuck it at police when they're just lined up and they're trying to protect a building or whatever it might be. So, I don't think it's very controversial to say that police are majority good people and they're heroes that come to your need. It's really not that hard to say that, but apparently it's controversial all of a sudden, and it's really just a common sense thing. That's what I would add to that.
Well, I would say it's not even that controversial. It's just that we live in an environment where there's so many social risks to putting your opinion out there that we really do have what is known as the silent majority. We have a huge swath of the population, and I would say a majority of the population, who feels afraid to even go out there and speak your opinion. And what you did was say that. And I think that's people are latching onto you, not because it's a rare and shocking thing, but more because most people actually agree with what you said, but a lot of people don't have the cojones to go out there and say it, especially under the circumstances which you were inside, which is this professor is responsible for deciding whether or not your grade can give you the credentials to move forward. I mean, it's an interesting situation, but I really would like to ask you more about the police, if you're comfortable doing so. I feel like your professor did not hold up her end of the argument, and part of that was she acted like a total jerk. And when you're a jerk, it doesn't matter how legitimate your points are. If people think that you are the bad guy, they're not going to listen to you. And you did a very good job of being calm and rational, and she did absolutely not do a good job of that. And hey, people are people. I don't want to bash anyone. You're absolutely right. We need diversity of opinion. I mean, that's the only diversity that actually matters. Right. If we're actually going to live up to our founding principles, then diversity of thought is the only one that matters. And we actually have to let people like her speak their opinion, but we also have to allow the opposition to speak. So I think the point that she was trying to make is, there actually is some legitimate historical evidence that suggests that in the South, Southern slave patrols did kind of integrate themselves and evolve into police forces. Now, this at all, it does not represent police forces en masse, especially police forces today in 2021. And once slavery was illegalized, official state-sponsored police forces were actually engaged in cracking down on that kind of vigilante, racist Southern militia law enforcement or not so law enforcement. But what do you have to say about police and the relationship between race and police and the media and police?
Yeah, well, I think it always can improve. I think that if there's bad conduct that happens with policemen, we should talk about it and say, how can we fix this and how can we bring this person to justice? And, I've seen that, and I do agree with her on that point. That's not a far-fetched thing. I don't want people to be hurt by other people, and I want them to be treated equally. That's the main thing. Now, with the media and the police, I think the media and the police, the media really ramps them up as terrible people. And I'd really challenge one media outlet besides Fox and OAN and Newsmax to just say a positive story about the police. If they saved a cat from a tree, or they saved a girl from something, or a little child, I just challenge them to do one story and just put it on primetime, like, with Don Lemon or something like that. Put it on primetime and say, what a story. And maybe they've done something like that. I hope they have, but I do challenge them, because the media always does negative stories, regardless of what political agenda you're with. They do negative stories. But I do challenge them to do one positive story about the police. Just say, hey, this one guy had a call and he saved someone's life, because they do it thousands and thousands of times. So that's what my answer would be to both of your questions there.
Gosh, I mean, it really does seem that the media, they don't work for you. They don't work for the audience. They work for their advertisers. They work to get traffic. Right. They're not in the job of giving an honest representation of the reality. They don't cover what is normal. They don't cover what is predictable. So when police stop a crime, or when in one weekend in Chicago, there are 92 people shot and 27 people killed, they don't talk about it. And you would think that if social justice, which, by the way, you don't need to add a modifier to the word justice. Justice has a definition and it's all encompassing. By adding a modifier like the word social or racial or environmental, you're actually detracting from the original definition of justice. You're doing a disservice to justice. But it is really unfortunate, the state of our media, and that's why it's so important to support independent media and to support media that's willing to actually go against some of the financial incentives that push them to cover nothing but the negative and the outrageous.
Yeah, I agree. And, that's how they run their business. I know that. And, I wish that they would do one positive story. I think that's an interesting point to make to people, that maybe let's just see a nice positive story. I know they do positive stories, but maybe about a firefighter. And I know the mainstream like CNN and MSNBC are more political, but you know what? You guys have politicized the police. So why don't you make a nice pro-police segment? It's not that hard.
Just be honest.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, for me, I don't have all the same beliefs about policing as a lot of the right wing does. Actually, I diverge on a lot of different points.
Sure.
But at the same time, no matter what, like, the police are enforcing the laws that were written by politicians. And we can see that CNN and many of these networks are nothing more than the communications branch of the Democratic Party. So it seems to me that for them to throw the blame on police for enforcing the laws written by their cohorts in Congress almost seems like an obfuscation of blame. It's like it just shows that they're working more for the guys in Congress than they're working for the little guys who are actually on the ground. Because if you're mad about the laws being enforced, you're going to need to be mad at the people who actually wrote the laws.
Right. I totally agree. And you know what? That's why I'm a term limits guy. We don't need people in there for 45 years and 60 years. Let's get some fresh people in there and get the job done. So I hope that, in 2022, when we're in the midterms, we have some good candidates. So I totally agree with you. And it's a good point. Very good point.
So what are some candidates that you like? I personally like Dan Crenshaw. I like that guy. I think he's a great guy. I'm praying for a speedy recovery.
Yes. Yeah, I heard about him, and I hope he's doing okay with everything that's going on. Good candidates. Well, I've heard Caitlyn Jenner. That's very interesting. I don't know how I feel about it.
Ooh. Hey.
I've heard about, Ron DeSantis with president or vice president with Trump. I do like Ron DeSantis a lot. He's a really good guy. Joe Collins, he's a local guy. He's around my area in LA. He went against Maxine Waters, really sharp guy. But yeah, I think the California governor's race is going to be very interesting to me. That's the one I'm really focused on until 2024, obviously. But Caitlyn Jenner, yeah.
People are very interested in Caitlyn Jenner. Now, I have upset some of the audience, and it really does seem like conservatives and libertarians are divided on this. I actually think that if any Republican could actually get, number one, the attention, and number two, gain some traction and kind of disarm a lot of the leftist arguments that keep Republicans out there. I think if any Republican could win, I think Caitlyn Jenner would actually perform better in California than Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. Now, Suni, she's horrified.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, Braden. It's awesome listening to you speak backstage. Seriously, this is a dope interview. I had to pop in when you mentioned Caitlyn Jenner. I'm like, no, we're not going to do this.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah. And, I do want to hear what she has to say. I'm curious, but I don't really have an opinion on her yet. So we'll see.
Yep. Well, Braden, is there anything you want to bring us out with here? I know we're getting to the half-an-hour mark here, but we do want to thank you again for coming on with us and really putting your time out here. Obviously, being in school and stuff, you're a busy man, and you're going to continue to be a busy man. And I hope you continue to use your platform and your voice in such a rational, awesome way. So, if there's anything else you want to say, go ahead.
Yeah. So I am looking. Yeah, I am looking at what I want to do with I guess my life apparently with politics or business or whatever I want to do. I am looking at a lot of options. I have some offers for some things, and I have a couple ideas for platform or whatever it might be. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for having me on here, Dylan and Cole. I appreciate it a lot. It's been an honor to be on here. So I do want to say one more thing to the audience, which is, don't be afraid to speak out. Just because someone has a louder voice than you doesn't mean they have the better argument. When you fight back against a Democrat, or maybe on the other side too, do it with gentleness and respect as well. Hear them out. We need to start listening to each other, because if we keep yelling and screaming and talking at each other, we're not going to get anything done. And obviously, look at Congress. They just scream and yell and they don't get anything done unless it's the best interest of them, right? So I just say I want unity on the country, and I pray that we get that soon, because we're really, really divided. And I pray that God can bless our nation one more time and keep his hand on our country.
Absolutely. Guys, remember
Amen,
that
brother.
Being a patriot means more than just loving the geography. It means more than loving your founding principles. In order to genuinely be a patriot, it means loving Americans, because loving Americans and being willing to stand up for your country really is the defining feature of patriotism. And if we're afraid to speak, we might as well fold up the flag, throw it on the ground, stomp all over it, and go home. It's over. It's done. So, Braden, thank you so much for joining the Primetime Patriots on another hopefully interesting and informative episode. And gosh, man, I hope that you and I can speak again. I really would like to dive a little bit deeper into some of these ideas, have conversations, even have some debates. So, gosh, I hope we can get in touch and continue this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to. And anytime you would need me for anything, just give me a holler.
Awesome. Well, we'll be around. Thank you again, Braden. You have a wonderful day, and keep kicking butt out there.
Thank you. God bless you guys. Appreciate it a lot.
God bless.